There's a trait more unsettling than cruelty, more dangerous than raw intelligence, and more powerful than money. It's not confidence. It's not charisma. It's fearlessness, but not the loud kind. Not the fake chest-out bravery that reckless people perform when they want attention. I'm talking about the cold kind. Quiet, still, controlled. The kind you feel in a person who doesn't need to prove anything, because they've already decided what they're willing to lose. That's the fearlessness Machiavelli understood. Because when a person truly stops fearing consequences, something changes in the entire room. Kings sleep lighter. Rivals watch their backs. Allies become cautious. Even friends start measuring their words. Not because that fearless person is protected, but because there's nothing left to threaten. Most people are ruled by fear every single day, and they don't even realize it. Fear of being disliked. Fear of being replaced. Fear of being exposed. Fear of standing alone. Fear of being laughed at, rejected, canceled, demoted, ignored, forgotten. And here's the brutal part. A life ruled by fear is not a life you control. It's a life you negotiate. You don't make decisions. Your fear makes them for you. You don't speak your truth. You calculate how it will land. You don't chase what you want. You chase what feels safe. Fear becomes an invisible chain. And if you don't break it, you will live and die as a pawn. That's why this topic is dangerous. Because fearlessness, real fearlessness, is not about being heroic. It's about being numb. It's about reaching a point where failure doesn't scare you. Betrayal doesn't surprise you. Loss doesn't weaken you. Even pain stops controlling you. And when fear dies inside you, something darker can move in. Absolute control. So in this video, I want to expose why fearlessness is the deadliest weapon in the Machiavellian arsenal, and why the people who master it don't just win, they dominate. Now let's be honest, most people don't live. They survive one fearful decision at a time. They stay quiet in meetings even when they know the truth. They let disrespect slide because they don't want conflict. They obey weak leaders because standing alone feels too risky. They tolerate betrayal because the alternative is uncertainty. And it all traces back to one thing. Fear is not just a feeling. Fear is a system. It's a hierarchy. It's a control mechanism. It's the lever that moves crowds. It's why the masses cling to comfort. It's why they form alliances built on insecurity. It's why they gossip, conform, and attack anyone who refuses to join the herd. Machiavelli didn't romanticize fear. He dissected it like a surgeon. He understood that rulers control subjects through fear, but he also understood something even more important. A weak mind surrenders its own power through fear. Look around right now. The modern world runs on it. Fear of being judged. Fear of losing money. Fear of being alone. Fear of rejection. Fear of not being enough. Fear of missing out. Fear of being left behind. And it gets worse, because fear doesn't just block action, it rewires your identity. You start living for approval. You start treating comfort like safety. You start mistaking popularity for power. And the moment your life depends on the opinions of others, you are already conquered. Because now you don't even need an enemy. You will police yourself. You will shrink yourself. You will soften your voice. You will apologize for your ambition. You will ask permission to be dangerous. That's why the first step to becoming powerful isn't be more confident. Confidence is fragile. Confidence collapses when you lose something. The first step is something colder. Kill fear, not manage it, not breathe through it, not talk kindly to yourself until it goes away. Kill it, because as long as fear is alive inside you, Real power can't live there. It can't share space. Fear will always take the wheel in the exact moment you need to act. And yes, most people will hate this message because they want fear to be treated gently. They want a soft solution, meditation, affirmations, comfort talk. But Machiavelli would laugh at that softness. He didn't believe in taming fear. He believed in turning fear into a weapon or eliminating it completely. So, how do you do that? Not with courage, with calculation. Fear thrives in uncertainty. It grows in the unknown. It feeds on emotion and chaos. The more vague your threat feels, the bigger it becomes. So the first move in a Machiavellian transformation is to take fear out of the shadows and drag it under bright light. Turn it into data. The moment you feel fear, don't run. Don't distract yourself. Don't numb out. Pause and interrogate it like an enemy. Ask yourself, what exactly am I afraid of? Name it. Is it losing money? Is it losing status? Is it being embarrassed? Is it being exposed? Is it being rejected? Is it failing publicly? Is it being alone? Break it down until it becomes specific. Because you'll notice something disturbing when you do this. Fear is rarely about real danger. It's about ego. You're not afraid of losing. You're afraid of looking like a loser. You're not afraid of rejection. You're afraid your self-image will crack. You're not afraid of pain. You're afraid of what people will think if you can't handle it. And that means what you've been calling fear is often vanity. And vanity is easier to kill than people realize. Because vanity depends on an audience. And the moment you stop needing the audience, the fear starts starving. This is where the first transformation begins. Crush your addiction to approval. Stop apologizing for wanting more. Stop shrinking your ambition to make insecure people comfortable. Stop softening your voice so you can be accepted. Stop performing humility when you're actually just afraid of being hated. Because here's the truth. The desire to be liked is one of the most effective chains ever invented. A person addicted to approval can be controlled with a glance, a rumor, a raised eyebrow, a silent group chat, a threat of exclusion. And once you see that, you understand why the truly powerful look so calm in situations that make everyone else panic. They are not free because they are good at confidence. They are free because they have stopped caring what you think. And when you stop fearing disapproval, you unlock something that terrifies people more than aggression. Freedom. Freedom to speak without filters. Freedom to act without hesitation. Freedom to execute without guilt. Freedom to walk away without explaining. Freedom to be misunderstood and not corrected. That's not motivation. That's a weapon. Now here's where most people fail. They think this is purely mental. Like you can just decide it in your head, and you're done. But fear lives in the body too. It lives in your habits, your routines, your comfort zones, your avoidance patterns. So step 2 is where it becomes real. You have to expose yourself to controlled confrontation. Because fear survives in comfort. Fear grows when your life becomes predictable. Fear becomes your default setting when you never challenge it. So if you want fear to die, you have to hunt discomfort deliberately. Start small, but start now. Speak when you feel that tightness in your chest telling you to stay quiet. Disagree when the room expects you to nod along. Set a boundary when your old self would apologize. Take actions that challenge your identity on purpose. Because every time you attack what frightens you before it attacks you, you're training your nervous system to stop flinching. Small rebellions harden the spirit. Small risks prepare you for larger conquests. If you can't handle the heat of a meeting, how will you survive the fire of politics and betrayal? Fear dies when you bleed in training. So train violently. Not recklessly, not stupidly, but consistently. And the goal isn't to become fearless overnight. The goal is to become the kind of person who no longer views fear as a stop sign. You view it as a signal, a target, a door. And once you step through that door enough times, you start to realize something. Fear isn't a wall. It's a test. And most people fail it every day. Now this is where the transformation becomes uncomfortable. Because once you've started killing fear at the surface level, you run into the deeper layer most people never touch. Attachment. Fear doesn't survive just because you're uncertain. It survives because you're attached. Attached to outcomes. Attached to identities. Attached to being seen a certain way. Attached to winning. Being respected. Being admired. Being loved. And as long as you're attached, you're vulnerable. This is why fearlessness isn't about recklessness, it's about detachment. So the third step, the brutal one, is this. Detach from outcome. Because fear feeds on the thought of loss. Not loss itself, but the anticipation of it. The image of everything falling apart. The imagined humiliation. The imagined consequences. You want success, love, respect, control. And the idea of losing any of it freezes you. That freeze is your weakness. That freeze is what makes you predictable. But when you detach, when you reach the point where losing doesn't alter who you are, you become something people can't manipulate. A paradox. The man who could lose everything and remain unchanged. That's what terrifies people. Because if you can't be rattled, you can't be controlled. If you can't be baited, you can't be trapped. If you can't be threatened, you are untouchable. That's real power. And detachment doesn't mean you don't want things. It means you've rehearsed failure so thoroughly that it no longer scares you. You've already imagined losing the money and surviving, losing the relationship and standing, losing the reputation and rebuilding. So when the threat comes, it has no leverage. You don't freeze, you move. This is where fearlessness starts to turn into influence. Because people feel it immediately when someone isn't negotiating with reality. They sense it in how you speak, how you pause, how you don't rush to explain yourself, how you don't scramble when things don't go your way. And once people realize you are not attached to outcomes, they become cautious around you. Because they know threats won't work. Now comes the Machiavellian shift, the point where fearlessness stops being purely internal and starts reshaping how others behave around you. Once you've killed fear inside yourself, the next step is to weaponize its absence. This is where many people misunderstand Machiavelli. He didn't admire cruelty for cruelty's sake. He admired control. And fearlessness is the foundation of control. When people realize you don't fear consequences, they begin to fear you. Not because you're loud, not because you're aggressive, but because you are unpredictable. You act without hesitation. You don't telegraph emotion. You don't respond the way they expect. You move only when it's strategic, and that creates tension. People begin to watch their words. They hesitate before crossing you. They think twice before testing boundaries, not because you threaten them, but because they can't read you. Now imagine walking into any room with that presence, not trying to dominate, not trying to impress, just knowing deep down that no one there can shake you. Imagine making a decision with zero doubt because you've already decided that failure doesn't change who you are. Imagine facing someone who once intimidated you and feeling nothing. That's the man Machiavelli wrote for. Not the good man, not the cautious man, but the man who feels nothing when it's time to act. Because once fear is gone, hesitation dies with it. And when hesitation dies, mercy starts to look different. This is where the conversation gets dark and honest. Because fearlessness doesn't just make you calm, it makes you ruthless. Not emotional, not angry. Ruthless in the sense that you stop delaying decisions that need to be made. Machiavelli was clear about this. It is much safer to be feared than loved. But most people misunderstand why. They think it's about intimidation. It's not. It's about certainty. Mercy, when used at the wrong time, creates uncertainty, and uncertainty invites chaos. The masses praise mercy because they are weak. They beg for kindness, not because they deserve it, but because they hope it will shield them from consequences. But the strategist doesn't give mercy to feel good. He gives it only when it serves a purpose, and when it doesn't, he removes the problem entirely. This is where fear tries to come back. You'll feel it whisper things like, "Give them another chance. Don't be too harsh. Explain yourself. Be fair." That's not wisdom. That's residue from your old fearful self. Burn it. Because the fearless man must learn a new law of power. Never hesitate to destroy a threat. Not out of emotion, not out of ego, but out of strategy. When someone undermines your position, disrespects your authority, leaks your plans, or poisons your reputation, you don't debate. You eliminate, quietly, completely, finally. This isn't cruelty. It's prevention. Power isn't sustained by being liked. It's sustained by being untouchable. And untouchable men don't wait for problems to grow. They remove liabilities early. Let's break this down clearly. First, mercy makes you look uncertain. When you spare someone who deserved punishment, it signals hesitation. It signals guilt. It signals that you can be pressured. And once people sense guilt, they press it. Second, mercy invites betrayal. Those you spare rarely feel gratitude. They feel opportunity. They interpret your forgiveness as softness, and they wait. Machiavelli warned that those who benefit from your mercy often become the ones who resent your power the most. Third, mercy delays the inevitable. The problem you avoid now doesn't disappear. It grows. It adapts. It returns stronger. Weakness compounds. Delay multiplies destruction. The fearful man shows mercy to feel safe. The fearless man shows no mercy because he is already safe. So let them call you cold. Let them say you've changed. Let them paint you as the villain. They don't understand the game. Power is not preserved through fairness. It's preserved through control. And control requires strategic brutality. Cold. Surgical. Precise. You don't punish out of anger. You punish out of necessity. You cut off a finger to save the hand. You remove a traitor before they infect the entire circle. Machiavelli admired Cesare Borgia for this exact reason. When Borgia needed to restore order, he unleashed a brutal enforcer to instill fear and obedience. And once order was restored, he eliminated the enforcer publicly to show that no one was above him. That wasn't cruelty. That was brilliance. That was fear engineered with precision. And here's the lesson most people miss. Fearlessness is not about taking unnecessary risks. It's about being willing to do what cowards won't. It's about enforcing your rule without emotion. It's about eliminating risk before it becomes a crisis. When people learn that you are capable of final decisions, they stop testing you. They stop pushing boundaries. They respect the silence behind your calm. Because they know when the moment comes, you won't hesitate. You won't explain. You won't forgive. You will finish. And that is where real power begins. This is where the path separates completely, where most people drop out. Because once you've killed fear and learned to act without hesitation, there's a price that shows up immediately. Isolation. To fear nothing means one thing above all else. You will walk alone. Not because you're evil, not because you're misunderstood, not because everyone hates you, but because the fearless man no longer needs others. And to the average person, that is terrifying. People will start saying things like, "You've changed. You're cold now. You're distant. You don't care like you used to." But what they're really saying is this: you stopped depending on us, and now we don't know how to control you. Fearlessness always comes with a cost, and that cost is separation. When you no longer seek approval, you stop blending in. When you no longer crave security, you become a threat to those who live for it. When you no longer fear being alone, you become untouchable. Machiavelli understood this better than most. He lived it. He was exiled, slandered, abandoned by the very powers he once advised, stripped of status, removed from influence, left alone with his thoughts. And yet he didn't break. Why? Because to a fearless man, solitude is not punishment. It's a sharpening stone. The weak seek crowds, the strong build silence, and the truly powerful disappear long enough to build empires unseen. Here's something no one tells you. Fear binds people together. It's why they gossip. It's why they form shallow alliances. It's why they cling to group identity. They are united by mutual insecurity, each one terrified of being excluded, replaced, or forgotten. But when you kill fear, you no longer need the tribe. You no longer need company to feel strong. You no longer need reassurance to act. You no longer fear being left behind because you already chose a path that leaves others behind. And that is the beginning of true dominance. Power is not loud. It's untethered. It's not about attention. It's about independence. It's about cutting the psychological chains that bind everyone else. The fear of abandonment. The fear of being misunderstood. The fear of being alone with your own thoughts. You must face those fears directly, or they will rule you forever. Complete detachment is uncomfortable, but comfort is for cattle. Power requires edge. Ask yourself this: why do so many strong men fall? Not because they lack ability, but because they surround themselves with comfort. Yes men, dependents, people who need them, and slowly, without noticing, their judgment rots. Machiavelli warned against this clearly. He believed a ruler must keep his circle small, his trust limited, and his mind his own. The moment you rely on others for strength, you hand them leverage. The fearless man doesn't beg for loyalty. He doesn't beg for company. He doesn't chase love, validation, or support. He commands respect through distance, through results, through silence. And that distance, that emotional gap, is what people fear most. People will try to guilt you. They'll say you're disconnected, that you've lost touch, that you're too serious. Good, let them say it. Because what they don't understand is that you're no longer playing by their rules. You're not here to be liked. You're here to be remembered. And the men who are remembered rarely rise surrounded by applause. They rise in silence. They conquer alone. Look at history. Napoleon feared and isolated. Julius Caesar betrayed by friends. Machiavelli himself writing in exile while the world dismissed him. That solitude didn't weaken them. It forged clarity. It removed noise. It sharpened ruthlessness. If you want real power, you must choose this path, not once, but daily. You will eat alone. You will make decisions that isolate you. You will break alliances that no longer serve you. You will walk out of rooms full of cowards. You will cut ties without apology, because fearlessness demands focus, And focus demands distance. Only then do you see clearly. Only then do you act without delay. Only then can you do what the fearful never will. Lead without needing anyone. And when the loneliness comes because it will, don't retreat. Don't run back to comfort. Don't dilute yourself to fit in again. Welcome it, because that silence is not emptiness. It's the echo of your evolution. It means fear is gone, and something stronger is taking its place. Power. Now comes the next transformation, the one that separates the strong from the truly dangerous. Once you no longer fear isolation, once you no longer need approval, once you no longer flinch under pressure, you begin to sense something. You begin to feel what others still fear, and this is where power multiplies. This is where Machiavelli smiles from the shadows. Because fear is the most effective weapon ever invented. You don't need violence when you have uncertainty. You don't need threats when silence does the work. You don't need force when people paralyze themselves in your presence. Machiavelli didn't just study fear. He taught leaders how to engineer it. He understood something timeless. People respond more strongly to potential pain than actual pain. They fear unpredictability. They fear mystery. They fear what they cannot calculate. And that is your new role. You are no longer just a man. You become a mirror, one in which others see their own weakness reflected back at them. So how do you wield fear without touching anyone? Step 1. Become unreadable. Predictable men are manageable. Unpredictable men are dangerous. You must become unreadable. Speak less. Smile less. Reveal nothing. Let people wonder what you're thinking. Let them fill the silence with their own paranoia. And make sure that when you do speak, every word carries weight. Controlled, deliberate, final. The moment people can't predict your next move, they stop feeling safe around you. And when people don't feel safe, they obey. Step 2. Broadcast power, never emotion. Weak men express emotion first. Strong men broadcast consequence. When you enter a room, people should feel tension, not comfort. Not because you're aggressive, but because you move like a man who does not play games. Your walk, your posture, your stillness, your eye contact. Everything should signal the same message. I see everything. I miss nothing. And I feel nothing. That's how tyrants rule without shouting. That's how kings win battles before they begin. And now comes the final escalation. Now we enter the phase where fear is no longer something you fight inside yourself. It becomes something you use. Because once you've stripped fear out of your own system, you start to notice it everywhere else. In how people hesitate, in how they over-explain, in how they laugh too quickly, agree too fast, soften their words, avoid eye contact, stall decisions. Fear leaks. And when you can see it, you can shape outcomes without force. This is where most people get it wrong. They think power comes from aggression, from dominance displays, from intimidation. That's amateur thinking. Real power is quiet. Real power is implied. Real power lets others imagine consequences for you. So the next step is this. Use fear to control outcomes without ever naming it. Once you understand what people fear, you don't need to threaten them. You don't need to raise your voice. You don't need to explain your authority. You let their imagination do the work. People don't follow strength. They follow what they fear losing. Status, access, belonging, security, reputation, position. So instead of confronting directly, you imply. Instead of warning, you pause. Instead of reacting, you observe. And in that silence, people start answering questions you never asked. What happens if he decides I'm a problem? What happens if I disappoint him? What happens if I'm removed? You never say it. They say it to themselves. That's leverage. This is why silence is more powerful than threats. Silence leaves space, and in that space, fear expands. Step 3 is where most people fail because it requires discipline. Never overplay your hand. Predictability kills fear. If you react emotionally, people learn your triggers. If you explain yourself, people learn your limits. If you argue, people feel equal to you. The moment people feel equal, fear disappears. So you must resist the urge to correct, defend, or justify. You don't respond to disrespect immediately. You don't chase clarification. You don't demand understanding. You file information. You watch patterns. You let people expose themselves. Because the man who reacts emotionally is controlled by the room. The man who stays still controls the room. Now, eventually, no matter who you are, someone will test you. Someone always does. They push a boundary. They undermine you quietly. They disrespect you publicly. They leak something they shouldn't. They challenge your authority to see if it's real. This moment is critical, because how you respond here defines everything that comes after. And this is where Machiavelli was absolutely ruthless in his clarity. When the test comes, you do not warn. You do not negotiate. You do not explain. You end it. Step 4, make an example. Fast, public, final, not out of rage, not out of ego, but out of necessity. Because fear only works when it's grounded in reality. If people believe you might act, but never see it, they eventually stop believing. But when one person crosses the line and is removed without drama, without delay, without mercy, everyone else recalculates instantly. They don't need speeches, they don't need rules, they don't need reminders. They've learned. That's how fear becomes a system instead of a feeling. That's how hierarchy is enforced without constant effort. People fall in line not because you asked, but because they understand what happens if they don't. And here's the part most people struggle to accept. This is not cruelty. This is control. Machiavelli warned that a ruler who is not feared will eventually be overthrown, not because people are evil, but because fear is the shield behind authority. Fear keeps blades sheathed. Fear keeps plots unfinished. Fear keeps chaos contained. Without it, power erodes quietly. Now understand what's happening at this stage. You no longer fear pain, but others still do. You no longer fear loss, but others still cling to it. You no longer fear isolation, but others are desperate to belong. And that fear becomes your currency, your armor, your leverage. The truly powerful don't fear consequences. They are the consequence. They don't flinch. They make others flinch first. This is the final evolution of fearlessness. Not just freedom from fear, but mastery over it. And once you reach this stage, something irreversible happens. You become unrecognizable. You stop reacting like prey. You stop asking for permission. You stop negotiating with your conscience in moments that require action. You stop explaining yourself to people who are already beneath your concern. You look the world in the eye and say without speaking, I don't fear you. I don't need you. And I'm not waiting. When fear dies, ruthlessness is born. Not chaos, not anger, but calm, surgical precision. You don't give mercy when it's undeserved. You remove threats before they grow. You expect betrayal and prepare for it. You require isolation instead of fearing it. While others chase applause, you build in silence. While they collect allies, you become a one-man system. While they panic in crowds, you sit alone and think clearly. You detach from outcomes. You detach from comfort. You detach from the need to be seen. And in that detachment, your power compounds. You begin to see patterns others miss. You begin to predict behavior before it happens. You begin to understand how fear governs almost every decision around you, how it makes people emotional, reactive, inconsistent. And because you're no longer ruled by it, you gain an edge that feels unfair. Now comes the final layer, the one that turns fearlessness into dominance. You stop using force. You stop overacting. You let stillness apply pressure. You become unreadable, unpredictable, untouchable. You never explain. You never bluff. You never rush. Your presence alone creates tension. Your silence becomes a question people can't answer. You don't threaten, you imply. You don't fight often, but when you do, you finish quickly. You don't escalate emotionally. You escalate structurally. You remove problems from the system. You make examples. You speak through action. And over time, something strange happens. People start warning others about you, not because you're loud, but because you're final. They say things like, "Don't test him. He doesn't play. He won't explain." That's when you know fear has fully transferred. It no longer lives in you. It lives around you. People obey not because they like you, but because they don't know what happens if they cross you. And uncertainty is more powerful than threat. You don't fear consequences. You are the consequence. This is what Machiavelli understood better than almost anyone. Fear, when mastered, becomes the deadliest weapon of all. Not because you turn it inward, but because you inject it outward surgically, selectively, strategically. And now, there's only one final truth left to face. Here is the final truth most people never accept. Fear is the hidden framework behind almost every weak life, every quiet regret, every moment where someone knew what had to be done and chose safety instead. It controls behavior more effectively than rules, more reliably than authority, and more deeply than morality ever could. Long before logic steps in, fear has already made the decision. And when you finally destroy it, you don't just improve. You become unrecognizable. You stop moving like prey. You stop asking for permission. You stop negotiating with comfort, approval, and security. You no longer design your life around avoiding discomfort. You stop filtering your decisions through how others might react. You stop shrinking your ambition to make insecure people feel safe around you. Something colder takes its place. You move with precision. You speak with intent. You act without hesitation. You don't announce your power. You don't display it. You let silence do the work. People feel it before they understand it. And by the time they understand it, they've already adjusted their behavior. You remove hesitation from your thinking. You stop explaining yourself to people who don't matter. You stop justifying decisions that are already necessary. And eventually, a realization settles in that permanently separates you from the crowd. You are no longer playing the same game as everyone else. While others are ruled by emotion, you operate by structure. While they react, you anticipate. While they seek reassurance, you execute. You don't threaten, you don't posture, you don't argue for authority. You act and let outcomes speak for you. This is where fearlessness reveals its true nature. It isn't heroic, it isn't noble, it isn't kind, it's efficient. When fear is truly dead inside you, ruthlessness doesn't feel cruel. It feels clean. Not chaos, not anger, but clarity. You stop offering mercy when it creates weakness. You stop delaying decisions that must be final. You remove threats before they grow. You don't flinch when betrayal appears because you expected it, and something else changes. You stop fearing isolation. You begin to require it. While others chase applause, you build in silence. While they collect allies, you become a system. While they panic in crowds, you think clearly alone. You train yourself to act while others hesitate. You train yourself to sit in stillness while others drown in noise. You detach from outcomes, from comfort, from the need to be seen. And in that detachment, your power multiplies. Because once fear no longer controls you, you start seeing how completely it controls everyone else. You see it in how people chase approval, in how terrified they are of standing alone, in how easily they can be pressured, flattered, threatened, or guilted. Fear makes people predictable. Fear makes them emotional. Fear makes them weak at the exact moment strength is required. And once you see this clearly, the final transformation begins. You stop fighting fear. You stop trying to overcome it. You start using it. This is where most people misunderstand power. They think it comes from force, aggression, or volume. They think dominance requires intimidation. It doesn't. True power is quiet. You become unreadable, unpredictable, untouchable. You say less. You reveal less. You react slower. You never over-explain. You never overreact. You never expose your full hand. Your stillness becomes pressure. Your silence becomes a question people don't want answered. You don't threaten directly. You imply outcomes and let imagination do the work. Because people fear uncertainty more than punishment. They fear not knowing where they stand. They fear not knowing what you're thinking. They fear not knowing when you'll act or if you already have. You don't fight often, but when you do, you finish completely. You make examples when necessary. You remove problems instead of negotiating with them. You speak through action rather than emotion. And slowly, the environment around you changes. People stop testing you, not because you demanded respect, but because uncertainty surrounds you. They don't know what happens if they cross you, and that unknown keeps them disciplined. You don't fear consequences. You are the consequence. This is what Machiavelli understood with ruthless clarity. Fear, when mastered, is not something to suppress or deny. It is something to engineer. You no longer turn it inward. You no longer let it dictate your decisions. You inject it outward quietly, selectively, strategically. And that is when power becomes stable. Power built on noise fades. Power built on force invites resistance. But power built on fearlessness and uncertainty sustains itself. Now understand this clearly. This path is not for everyone. It will cost you approval. It will cost you comfort. It will cost you easy relationships. You will be misunderstood. You will be labeled cold, distant, ruthless. People will say you've changed. They're right. You changed because you stopped needing them, and that independence is what frightens them most. But what you gain in return is rare. Freedom. Absolute freedom. Freedom to act without hesitation. Freedom to walk away without guilt. Freedom to decide without fear of loss. Freedom to stand alone without breaking. This is not motivation. This is not self-help. This is the cold blueprint for control, for those who refuse to live as pawns. You can stay average, or you can burn fear to the ground and build something colder in its place. The choice is yours. Welcome to the silence behind true dominance. Welcome to Machiavelli.